This is a show about jewelry, why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the cannabis goldsmith. So it's been quite cool in this part of Ontario. It's like almost summer, and it just doesn't feel like it. It's cool. I mean, stuff is growing and everything is green, but it seems to have slowed down. Except for one of the weed plants. One of the 4 weed plants is like at over 6 foot now. And the leaves are huge, like bigger than my hand on this plant. So I was looking at one of the leaves yesterday, and I was thinking, maybe I can make a cuff, or maybe I can make a kind of an armband out of one of these giant leaves in silver. In gold, it would be like $20,000. So we'll make it in silver and see how that works. But the leaves are each, if I take a single leaf out of one of these big hand-like fronds on this cannabis plant, I mean, the single leaf is almost a foot long now. It's like crazy long. So I'm thinking I could wrap this around a person's upper arm in silver. So that's where the idea comes from. Suddenly get an idea. I mean, I look at a plant and boom, the idea comes out. Let's make an armband out of this leaf. Let's see if we can do that. And then it just becomes a matter of figuring out how to do it. And in this case, I learned something. I mean, I was trying to figure out, how do I make the leaves thicker? I've been trying to figure this solution for this. Like we work with cannabis leaves that are alive, right? And we cast them in precious metals. Now, in order to do this, they're so fragile, as I've described before, and they break, and it's just been so difficult to get them to work well in casting and to make jewelry pieces out of. But we figured it out, and I figured it out mostly maybe a couple of years ago, and but we're continuing to modify the technique of doing it a little bit at a time, through practice and through trial and error. And I made a discovery yesterday that I've been trying to sort out for years. How do I thicken the leaves so that I can make jewelry out of them in the best possible way? And by this I mean, if you pick a leaf off a plant, it's thin. It's like maybe 1/4 of a millimeter, 1/2 millimeter thick, the actual leaves. And cannabis leaves are thin. There's veins in them, I guess, where the energy from the plant goes to the individual leaf cells and stuff. You can see on any leaf there's like veins on it. And so there's that characteristic, but there's like a thin leaf material. The green material is like thin. It breaks when you try and make jewelry or work with it or convert it into gold or silver. It breaks. These leaves break. And any leaf, I mean, you can get a thick leaf like a cactus, for example, right? And those are really sturdy. You can easily make jewelry pieces out of that, but this is different. So it's taken me years to figure out how to do this thickening. And I do it in different ways. I mean, we can do it by brushing on materials onto the leaf to thicken it. We can coat the leaf with a paint on an electrically conductive material like graphite, and then electrically coat the graphite with gold, so we can build on the actual leaf itself. And then the leaf, that gets burned out in a kiln, so you have like an electroformed piece. That's possible. But I want more than that. Like I just don't want to copy the plant It's like it make an exact duplicate of the plant. Because why? I want to take the best features of it and then add our own vibe to it and then make jewelry out of it. So thus the thickening of the leaves. So when I was looking at this big leaf on this plant, on this KwaZulu-Natal plant, I was thinking, wow, man, it's like 8-9 inches long, one of these leaves now. I could wrap one of these around a woman's arm in silver or in gold. It would look just crazy good. But the idea is I'd have to thicken the leaf up to maybe the thickness of a quarter, a coin. Thicker than a dime, but not as thick as a nickel. Maybe in the middle, maybe a quarter thickness, the thickness of a quarter, 25 cents, Canadian or US. So we got like a thickness of maybe 2 millimeters. I don't know what a coin is, but you know what it feels like. So I have to make the leaf that thick and then bend it into so it can warp around an upper arm. So that's the idea behind this giant leaf thing. And when I was thinking, how can I thicken the leaves? How can I thicken these leaves in order to get the leaf to cast in silver? And I started fiddling around with different materials and chemistry and glues and like all kinds of, like I've been doing for years to do this. And I've discovered a way to do it. And it's very labor intensive. I mean, it's really labor intensive, but I can thicken these leaves up. So today I'm going to try and take one of these leaves and thicken it up and see if I can make a mock-up of an upper armband cannabis leaf. And we'll see if I can make a good master out of it. It will be a nice product to make. This could also be wrapped around a wrist too. Or I'm trying to think, if I get a long enough leaf, if this plant keeps growing, I could probably make a choker out of it even. Like this plant is massive. The leaves are massive on it. I think it's going to be a 16-footer, hopefully, if the weather gets warmer. If not, it'll be shorter. What else is going on? I hate taxes, man. I hate the government, but I hate taxes. But I'm my whole life I've tried to stay on top of them and to try and, it's hard for artists to deal with numbers. I mean, there are people who deal with numbers, and then there are people who deal with non-numbers, like artists. And it's like oil and water. The mindset is completely different. So eventually, I've had a couple of accountants over the course of my life, and I have this new accountant, and we are so different, right? Like he's an accountant, he's all numbers and shit, and I'm all about art and branding and marketing and all this stuff that is really hard to quantify in numbers. And he's no numbers, anyway. So I'm in that mode, and I'm up to date now, I think. Oh God, I fucking hate it. And all you artists out there, I know you hate it too, don't you? Man. So in the last episode, I talked about the pain of failure. That failure is good. You need failure to move ahead, right? That's what I talked about in the last episode. That failure is pain, but it's essential for growth as an artist or as a human being. But there's other stuff artists go through too, and the whole idea of artists' pain or trauma, that artists have to be traumatized or in pain in order to create good work. I don't believe that for a minute, but I think that everybody experiences the kind of pain that artists do. It's just that it impacts artists differently. I know we're really susceptible to things like drug addiction and alcoholism. I watched a movie last night called Forced Perspective. It's an older movie. I don't know. You can download it somewhere, I guess. But it's about artist Derek Hess out of Cleveland. He used to draw all these posters for concerts and punk shows, or in Cleveland, rock shows. And his art is just amazing. If you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. You've seen it before. So do a search for Derek Hess and you'll see it. Or better still, watch the movie, which is really informative. I like watching movies, documentaries about artists, because I'm an artist and I want to learn how other artists are dealing with their process, which can be like riding a wild horse sometimes, and other times it's boring as fuck, where nothing actually happens. And it's really boring and slow. And then all of a sudden there's these bursts like that. Some of us, I know, I went through this just doing the leaf thing yesterday. I spent the whole fucking day working on that. Just that, to the exclusion of everything else, because I was making progress with it, right? And did it. But anyway, this movie, Forced Perspective, was interesting. Derek talks about, he has mental illness. He has his bipolar disorder and depression. He's also an alcoholic. And a lot of us, I know I had huge issues with alcohol when I was a young man, and I had to stop drinking and in order to survive. Otherwise I would have died, right? I was like so bad. And in 1989 I stopped, and I haven't had a drink since then. But artists like us we can self-medicate when our process takes us to these super high intensity work flow situations, when the ideas are coming and we're like at the workbench, we're making shit out of clay or like carving stuff, or whatever our art is, but we've got this, something's coming out of us into form, into a three-dimensional real thing. And we're making it. And when we're in that mode, it's great. But then there are other times when that might go too quickly and it's not great. And so we'll medicate out of it. Or if nothing happens, just the sheer boredom between these strikes of inspiration or idea, or even just doing the work daily, like Derek Hess used to do. Like every day he would draw, like no matter even if he wanted to or not, right? And this is important for an artist, to be making art all the time, whether you feel like it or not, because it keeps shit from building up, right? Anyway, he where was I? Oh, about the substances. Artists throughout time are being pulled down by substances, like, because it's too easy. Sometimes being an artist is painful. Like, it's painful. If we can't get our stuff out of us that we need to get into the world, we go nuts. We do. We go absolutely batshit. If you're involved with an artist who's not producing work, you know what I'm talking about, right? If you're in a personal relationship with an artist who's not producing work of some type, or channeling that energy off somewhere, grounding it out safely, God, good luck to you, because we have to get this stuff out, right? Or we have to medicate it down or whatever. And it's far better to getting the art produced than it is bottling it up, not doing it, whatever. But we get to this point where, I don't know if I'm making sense to any of you, but this is how I feel about it anyway. We get to this point where we can't produce work for some reason, because we don't have the idea or the inspiration, or we just can't get the idea, connect with it. The idea is there, but we somehow can't concretize it, make it real, right? That's the danger point there. That's for artists, that's the real, that's, that can drive an artist to drink, literally. But we don't want that. So the idea is to make art, whether you feel like it or not, and just to keep doing it. And it keeps the tubes, it cleans the tubes out. It lubricates the chakras. It keeps things in motion. So we don't get any of the sludge building up in the creative process. That's what I think anyway. So today what I'm doing, I'm going to experiment with the leaf to get a huge leaf and cast it. So then I can do other shit with it. I can make it into an armband or a cuff. And we'll see where it goes from there. It might not even go there. It might go somewhere else. But that's what I'm going to try today. I'm working on this huge charm bracelet still. There are a couple of pieces that I need, like connectors that I need. So I've got a supplier for this particular piece that I need to incorporate into the larger piece. You'll see when it's done. It's going to be just crazy. But this isn't just going to be one piece. It's a giant charm bracelet. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. It's called Drugs. It's got bongs and dab rigs all over it. It's got like a mushroom. It's got it's all about drugs. And then there's another one I'm working on called Party Time, which is similar, but it has a boom box, a blaster on it. So you've got everything you need. You'll have like a mushroom. You'll have like a bong, a blaster, a cannabis bud, or a cannabis leaf, all on a giant heavy charm bracelet. And these charms can be unclipped. These are these little things that I'm waiting for, unclipped, and then you can wear them as individual pendants, break them off the charm bracelet, or you can put them on. And they're not small. They're large pendants. So this is going to be oversized charm bracelet with large pendants hanging off it, called Drugs. And another one called Party Time. So those are the two crazy pieces that I'm working on still. Now I've got the charm bracelet. I've got a section in my workshop where I do photography. So in one corner, I do photography all over the workshop, but the camera moves everywhere in the workshop, which is good because I can photograph everything I do. But there's one area where I photograph under more controlled, like lighting conditions, where everything I can adjust how black the black is in the background, that kind of stuff, right? For small objects, for close-ups and macro photography. So I'm going to do a bit of that today too. I'm still like tuning the website and stuff like this. All this stuff artists have to do to do their art, right? So this Derek Hess documentary it's called Forced Perspective. So seek it out and watch it. I learned a lot from it. I mean, I guess it can be really lonely being an artist, and you could see it when he's talking, right? You can see he's trying to describe his process, and he does. But artists aren't good at doing that, right? They're good at making art and showing you their process, not talking about it. What I hope to do with this podcast, part of it is that I hope to talk about the process that I use when I make my pieces and what I want to achieve with them and what they mean and all. That's the whole point of this show is just to build out from jewelry, in that respect. So if you pick up a piece of jewelry, you'll understand maybe what might have gone into its manufacture. So that's the purpose of this, one of the purposes of this podcast, but also just to explore the whole idea of the art process of creating things, of making things. God, there's not enough documentaries about artists. There need to be more. I keep searching. I'm searching online for all these it's so hard to get these things on a Netflix because all the algorithms only show what most people want to watch, I guess. So that's what you're going to find. But some of these are probably have very low viewer counts, or they're documentaries, right? Some of them are kind of dry, and there's no special effects in them or anything. They're just like information. But it's the kind of information I want as an artist. I want to find out how other artists are doing the work. Like, how are they doing this shit? Like, how do they feel while they're making this art? Even if they don't make art like me, even if they don't make jewelry like me, or products, that can be sold online or whatever, even if they just like paint and, for their own reasons, as we do. I want to find out why. That interests me, Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, why weed? Oh, weed has been one of the most important things in my life, right? From the moment from the age of 13 or 14, it's been massive. It's impacted my life at various points, right? In different junctures, and it's changed my life's trajectory. So as I'm an old guy now. I keep saying that, but it's true. And as I get older, all these things start to come together, and this is why I've taken the jewelry and this cannabis direction. It's a way of honoring it, and luckily in Canada, it's legal, so I can do this, right? So yeah, that's how my reason. But I don't even know. Like, a lot of artists can't even describe why they make the work they make. They just have to do the work, right? They have to do the work, because if they don't and it gets bottled up, oh man, it's just pain for everybody. So give them like paint and some brushes and just some paper, and let them go, right? That's what it's about. I think I'm not a father, and it's Father's Day just passed, and I'm like, I'm not a father, so I can't probably speak to any of this, but I can speak as a kid, because I'm a kid, right? Still, even though I'm like old, but I still remember quite clearly what it was like being a kid, and so I'm speaking as a kid, not as a father. And I'll say, when I was a kid, a lot of the grief in my later life could have been solved if my parents had given me a set of paints, or told me about different artists or different painters, even if they didn't know about it. Maybe they might have bought me a book on painting or something. Something as simple as that, or another book on sculpture, or maybe something like that, and let me read it, because I would have soaked it up. But no, instead the parents were, the traditional learning, like, lawyer, doctor, a biologist, or a scientist, or that kind of, this is the schooling you need. And once you get a degree, you'll get a job and everything will be great, right? But art is, I think what society needs is art, right? And as a kid, I think I'm finding all these drawings and stuff my mom kept when I was a child. And some of them are really good. And I'm not just saying that because I'm so full of them myself, like I can be sometimes. But I'm saying that they, I've showed them to other people and they say, fuck, So the thing is, my mom kept them. So she must have recognized it's not merely a souvenir of me, but maybe I think it's more of a souvenir of my art skills back in when I was like 4 or whatever. Now, a box of paints might have changed my life, right? Might have kept me out of a lot of trouble later in life. Or some books on art, right? Or maybe even a pottery class. Like, here, take this pottery class. Here, I've signed you up for this pottery class. Something like that. But I guess parents are too worried about their own shit to really notice what's going on with their kids. And I think that's, my parents. There was a great divide. There's this generation, a generation divide? It's still like there's divides between the Gen Zs and the millennials, and oh God, but kids everywhere are the same. If the kid is showing interest in art, or is starting to carve fucking rocks into shapes, it's time to look at your kid differently, and not try to make them a doctor, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Anyway, this show has just been a ramble about all this documentary has triggered a lot of stuff. Watch some artist documentaries; they're really good. I've learned so much from watching other artists and how other artists think about stuff. It's really helped me a lot. So, in my own work, or how I understand my own work, sometimes it's just that you want to hear somebody say the things that are affecting you, that you do too, right? That are common, that you don't really tell anybody about, but you this is how you work too, right? It's like, oh God. Anyway, artists, man, we're now I have to convince my accountant that art is valuable. How the fuck do I do that, right? Art is valuable. Everybody knows this. You just have to go to a fucking museum, look at the statues and stuff, and you just have to. Art has value, and but it might be hard to quantify at any moment. Anyway, I'm gonna work on this thing. It's really early in the morning. I couldn't sleep last night. I got up at 3, paced around, had a cup of coffee, and I was like, "Fuck, you know what? I'm not going back to sleep. I'm gonna record this podcast." And then get to work in the workshop trying to make a giant armband in sterling silver out of this huge cannabis leaf. I'll take some photos and I'll upload them to the Instagram stories thing. I've been very, very not slack. I've just avoided Instagram. I just have a distaste for these tech bros now for some reason, as a lot of us do. It's a big scam they're pulling on all of us. Post all your shit on Instagram every day so they can earn the billions, and you work for free. So I'm reevaluating all this social media scam shit. But I do post occasionally on stories because I know that'll disappear quickly. And I might put a post up in the Instagram page. But you can find work from me at tribe.ca, which is our home base. Tribe. We're the cannabis goldsmiths here in Canada, where summer is beginning. It's a cool summer. The Cannabis Goldsmith is produced by Tribe Communications Inc. in the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada. You can see what we do at tribe.ca. Send us an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Cannabis Goldsmith. Oh my God, I can see the sun coming up over the river. Oh, wow. America, you're looking good this morning. All bronze and gold. Oh my God. Wow.